The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferentz.
A win for Teamsters at a Hard Rock casino in Virginia. Meanwhile, California nurses celebrating a win on nurse-to-patient staffing. And today on the show, the Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO. Welcome to the Friday, June 5th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. Well, it's our first Friday with Fred Redmond, Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO, will be joining us today. National website, AFL-CIO.org, and I urge you sometime today or over the weekend to check out that website. Click on Executive Paywatch. Every year, the Labor Federation does this, and what they do, they take a look at all the CEOs in America. They average out their salaries, see what they're making, and see what you're making. All right? Right now, the average CEO to worker pay ratio, 285 to 1. Okay? Now, depending on where you're working, there's some places it's 1,000 to 1, 1,500 to 1. Way out of whack. And there was a time in America that did not happen. Things have changed in America. There's been this huge transfer of wealth from the middle class to the upper class. Fred is going to talk about that. And it's only gotten worse with all these tax breaks, especially this so-called big, beautiful bill. The average CEO took home a $1.24 million raise last year, while working families struggle to make ends meet. That is because of the tax cuts in the current administration, the so-called big, beautiful bill. So it's only getting worse. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we're talking about it. The AFL-CIO convention will be discussing that. And there's a lot of billionaires in the country today saying, you know what, I'm okay. I don't need all this money. We got to close that gap. It's a huge gap, and it's out of control. Fred's going to talk about that. He'll also discuss what's going to happen at that convention, affordability. Tim Berger was on the show the other day. Tim, of course, the head of the Ohio AFL-CIO. That's the number one topic, and that's going to be discussed a whole lot at the convention next week, along with the candidates, working class candidates that can make a difference, especially in November. So Fred Redmond, our first Friday with Fred, right here on America's Workforce as our featured guest. And now, a brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. Got to do a shout out here to Teamsters Local 519 out of Bristol, Virginia. That's where a group of 221 table games dealers at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Bristol have voted to join Local 519. Now, they're seeking a fair first contract that includes higher wages, improved benefits, and a strong voice on the job. Don't we all want that? I got a nice comment here from Tommy Blitch. Tommy is the director of the Teamsters Convention Trade Show and Casino Division, one of the 19 divisions of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Teamsters, by the way, let me do it from the top again. 3, 2, 1. I'll get through this. Just bear with me. And now, a brief look into the world of labor. This segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. Got to do a shout out here for Teamsters Local 519 in Bristol, Virginia. That's where a group of 221 table games dealers at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Bristol have voted to join Local 519. They're all seeking a fair first contract that includes higher wages, improved benefits, and a strong voice on the job. Tommy Blitch is director of the Teamsters Convention, Trade Show, and Casino Division. There's about 19 divisions with the Teamsters, one of the many proud sponsors of America's Workforce, I might add. This is what Tommy says. Dealers and dual rates are the backbone of the gaming floor. When they stand together, they have the power to win real improvements on the job. He went on to say it was the best decision to choose the Teamsters, and we're proud to support them. Now, the dealers are responsible for operating table games like blackjack, roulette, and poker. They manage the games, handle the chips and the payouts, and ensure the games are conducted fairly and efficiently. One of the organizers is Marty Hinch. Marty says it was a team effort from start to finish. We had the best team to fight for representation. Anthony Keene is one of the dealers. Anthony says choosing to join the Teamsters was about securing respect, stability, and a voice on the casino floor. We are ready to negotiate a contract that reflects the hard work that we do every day. By the way, the Teamsters represent nearly 6,000 members at casinos and casino hotels. Good news there. Also good news out of California, where nurses are celebrating the historic, and I mean historic, implementation of long-awaited safe nurse-to-patient staffing ratios. Now, this is in the state's acute psychiatric hospitals that should dramatically improve the care behavioral health patients receive. Now, this was only accomplished because of the hard work of the California Nurses Association, which pretty much pressured the governor and the state's Department of Public Health. Kathy Kennedy is an RN and president of the CNA. Kathy said, we know for more than 2 decades of experience with mandatory minimum RN to patient staff. We know from more than 2 decades of experience with mandatory minimum RN to patient staffing ratios in hospitals that ratios not only improve care and save lives, but better safety and working conditions for nurses to keep us at the bedside. Through mandatory minimum safe registered nurse-to-patient staffing ratios for acute psychiatric hospitals being mandated by the safe staffing legislation California Nurses Association sponsored and fought to pass back in 1999, the state failed for over 2 decades to actually follow up with regulations for acute psychiatric hospitals. So some hospitals were covered, some were not. Now, thanks to the nurses here and the California Nurses Association, there's a number of regulations that went into effect as of Monday of this week, but one really stands out that I have to share with you. Removing language that would have allowed one registered nurse to be responsible for up to 24 patients during a 12-hour shift or up to 16 patients during an 8-hour shift. How on earth can you handle that? So that language is gone. And hats off here to the California Nurses Association for doing what they do each and every day. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Fred Redmond, it's our first Friday with Fred right here on America's Workforce. Don't go away. We'll be back right after this.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferens.
It takes LIUNA to build North America's infrastructure. From roads and bridges to schools and skyscrapers, the men and women of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, build the projects we depend on. From constructing the Freedom Tower on the site of the former World Trade Center to untangling Washington, D.C.'s congested interstate, LIUNA members do the work that matters. Find out what it takes to be built by LIUNA at liuna.org. That's liuna.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
brings unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org. Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, to loggers, and miners. Back in 1965, the Blues developed the National Labor Office to strengthen its commitment to organized labor. Blue Cross Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families, all working hard for America's working families, for the health of America. You can learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Ironworkers. You can find more at ironworkers.org. Founded in 1887, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters represents the employees responsible for tirelessly constructing and maintaining the national rail system in America. For more than a century, the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees has proven they have what it takes to protect its members and meet the ever-changing challenges of the rail industry. Today, the BMWED continues to fight for job security, fair wages, better benefits, and safer, more modern work environments. For more information, please visit bmwe.org. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Well, it's our first Friday with Fred. Every Friday, the beginning of the month, we check in with Fred Redmond. Fred is Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO, and I can only assume he'll continue that position when they have the AFL-CIO convention next week. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first and foremost, I want to talk about the pay disparity. And welcome back to America's Workforce, Fred. Thanks for joining us once again.
Well, thanks, Flash. Thanks for having me.
You know, you and I have had many conversations about the rich getting richer and the rest of us either going downhill, probably going downhill, especially with the increased cost of benefits today. But I want to reference a report here on what's called the gross national income. And it's pretty gross. Okay. The GNI indicates that the disparity between workers' wages and benefits and corporate profits has hit a record high. Workers' share of the gross national income, which is an income based on the gross domestic product, dropped to 51%, the lowest ever recorded, as workers' compensation grew by less than a percentage point between the first and fourth quarter. Meanwhile, corporate profits, well, they grew by 2.7%, reaching their highest share of GNI in nearly 80 years. Now, those of you listening, I urge you to go to the AFL-CIO website after this podcast is complete and read the annual Executive Paywatch that the AFL-CIO does each and every year, and it shows that disparity just continuing. I mean, the CEOs today, well, the average CEO, we're talking about $489,000, okay? And then you got all the stock options and all that kind of stuff. They actually took home $1.24 million. That's the raise they got last year. What are workers making? About 50 grand. About 50 grand. That's pretty much average. Fred, you and I come from a time that didn't happen.
No, that's exactly right. And, the thing that's insane and really obscene about what we're seeing today is CEOs, billionaires, the entire billionaire class, these folks legitimately feel that the answer to income inequality, the answer to giving billionaires and corporations more tax breaks, more loopholes, and more money, okay, is the answer the problems that's been caused by these folks having too much money. So, it's an insane concept that we're seeing, particularly in this country, where we see the billionaires getting richer, the CEOs getting more profitable, and the employees, the workers, are the ones that's paying the price. It's like reverse Robin Hood. What we are really witnessing in this country, like you mentioned, Flash, is the biggest income inequality that we've seen in the history. But we also seen the gap in terms of income inequality just getting bigger and bigger in this country. And that's why elections matters, and that's why elections make differences, because we have to get people in the office who really feel as though and understand and know within their gut that the worker is getting the short change of this whole economic system in the United States.
Now, you got this going on and the acceleration of artificial intelligence. And I was talking to Tim Berga earlier this week, and it's interesting to note that Pope Leo is now concerned, because this is a global thing. It goes beyond America, and it's got to stop. And there's a lot of people right now, especially those coming out of college, wondering, my gosh, is my job going to be around in the next couple of years? I mean, we're seeing layoffs already in various companies right now. That's got to be resonating right now, don't you think?
Well, it got to be resonating, and, a big, appreciation to the Pope for really, really mentioning that in his remarks, because, this is a problem that's going to affect all Americans. As we see, the issue of artificial intelligence really, really being exploited by the tech industry. We really, really see where the tech industry is really spending millions and millions of dollars. They even flashed through Trump's big, beautiful, ugly bill. They really tried to pass a provisions of that bill that said that for 10 years, states cannot put provisions into their artificial intelligence language in any particular state to try to protect workers. Unfortunately, it was defeated 99-1. So what that says is that this is really resonating with people. People are really aware of the potential of artificial intelligence on all of our jobs, our lives, and we must have protections to protect average, hard-working people and protect our communities against this surge. We've been through an industrial revolution in manufacturing, the industry that I came out of. We've been through the whole process of automation, but nothing like artificial intelligence, which literally has the power and will have the technology to control our daily lives.
Fred, this is what I call the big disconnect in America. I'm sure you've been watching. Well, everybody, especially if you have a pension fund, you want to know what's going on Wall Street. And Wall Street is, the Dow is at a record high, the NASDAQ's at a record high, but a lot of that is being driven by just a few companies. And these are the companies that are involved in artificial intelligence. And, everything has a bubble to it. You know that.
Right. Right.
So there's scary times on that. But Wall Street and Main Street are two different parts here. There's a lot of workers suffering, and they're very much, as I pointed out earlier, very much concerned. Which leads me to the AFL-CIO convention. I know you are leaving this weekend. The convention this year is going to be in Minneapolis, which was, of course, the center of attention last year. By the way, did they pick Minneapolis a while ago on that one, or what? How does that work?
We picked Minneapolis before the whole immigration fight and the deportations. We picked Minneapolis quite a few years ago. I want to say right after the last convention 4 years ago, we landed on Minneapolis. We're very excited about going into the city. This is a city that has really, really pushed back on this administration's policies. They has really, really embraced progressive values and, progressive ideas in that city. They have really embraced the concept of solidarity in this city, and we're just happy to be there.
What's the agenda look like right now? I'm sure you've got a couple of outlines. Maybe you could share a few things with us.
Well, we're going to tell a story. Organized labor has a story to tell, and our convention is going to tell that story. We're going to talk about how, despite everything that this administration has done to working people, we're still standing. And we're standing strong. We're organizing, even though they said that we're not going to be able to organize new members into the union. We're organizing at record rates, fighting back in the courts. We're winning. So we have a story to tell. Then we're going to hear from workers throughout the convention, workers that's struggling to make ends meet from week to week, that's really, really hanging in there, fighting the good fight, workers that go to work every day, pay their taxes, trying to educate their children, and trying to just be good citizens, and the struggles that they're having. We're going to tell that story at this convention. We're also going to talk about what we've been talking about, the threats of artificial intelligence and the potential that it has to really, really disrupt our economy and our nation. And we're going to talk about the issue of income inequality, the gap between CEOs and billionaires and the average worker. So we got a story to tell, and it's going to be a compelling story. We're going into this convention understanding that when our backs is against the walls in terms of organized labor, that we come out fighting back. And we're going to leave this convention ready to go into the midterms and ready to go into the future, optimistic, ready to fight, and motivated by our solidarity as a labor movement and as working people in this country. So, we're excited about the convention. Our hope is for people to leave there with hope that this struggle is a struggle that can be won by our solidarity, and I mean true solidarity, real solidarity, where your fight is my fight, where your strike is my strike, your contract campaign is my contract campaign. And we want to generate a feeling in that convention hall that we're all in this fight together. It's one fight with one movement, that's the labor movement, working with our community partners and allies who will be at the convention. We got a lot of community groups from the Minneapolis area that's going to be joining in with us. And we're going to show the solidarity that they showed in Minneapolis and make it our mantra around this country as we lead the convention.
Fred, you've been a union leader for a long time. Do you feel that organized labor, with all the attacks on workers here, especially with this current administration, that labor is probably more galvanized than ever before? What do you think?
I think so. I think labor is really realized that we're the most trusted voice in society. Is that in all the polls show that working people trust the voice of organized labor in order to stand up and in order to fight on behalf of workers, whether they're union or non-union, but to make sure that workers in this country get a shot and make sure that workers in this country are respected. Workers around this country is looking for labor to deliver just that. As a student of labor history, I remember back in the 30s and 40s when folks told the Steelworkers Organizing Committee, the auto workers, they told us, don't bother organize. The employers aren't going to bargain with you. And we built the labor movement. We built a solid middle class. I remember back in the 60s during the civil rights struggle when people say you have to wait. Now is not the time. And people marched anyway. And we achieved historic legislation that really liberated a whole class of people. And I think this is one of those times. I recall when Dr. King said a year before he died, he said, we can't afford to wait. And now is one of those moments in history where we can't afford to wait. And I think this is a historic moment in our history. I think the labor movement was built for this moment. And I feel very, very optimistic that we're going to be able to come together and turn this around.
Fred Redmond, Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO, getting ready for the convention in Minneapolis. They have this convention every 4 years now. You and Liz will be reelected. No opposition right now, to your knowledge, Fred, or what?
We're going into this convention very confident with the support that we have amongst our 65 unions that make up the AFL-CIO. So we feel very, very confident. We're not taking anything for granted, but we're looking forward to charting the course for the future, along with our affiliate unions and our 15.5 million members.
Fred, I got to hand it to you. I don't have to tell you, you're not a young guy anymore. This is a 4-year stint. I mean, you got a lot of energy in you, brother. I don't know how you...
I really debated this, had a lot of discussions with my family. And, as long as I got a little gas left in the tank, okay, then I want to make sure that I'm out on the front lines with working people every day. That's where I get my energy from. And, I'm having too much fun in this fight right now to walk away now.
There you go. Well, you got a good team over there, and Liz is a great leader,
Absolutely.
Yourself included. I'll tell you, everybody at the AFL-CIO, those of you listening, to go to the AFL-CIO website, aflcio.org, and read about what has happened in America. This was a slow grind. It started back in the 80s, I think, when Reagan was in office. And that's when the shift happened from workers to corporate profits. And I remember reading several times. I follow Heather Cox Richardson, who does a great blog every day. She's a history professor at Boston College. And she points out in the last 50 years, about $50 trillion has shifted from us, workers, to the upper class, to corporations. I mean, take a look at Elon Musk. He's a trillionaire. Now. So that's got to stop. There has to be a breaking point in all that. Those of you listening, do check that out because we need action on this. I'm going to let you go, brother. Have a safe trip to Minneapolis, and we'll talk all about it next month, okay?
Absolutely. Take care, Flash.
And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Coming up Monday, the Union Busters of America. We'll tell you all about it then. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful weekend.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.